wants to watch after. And comment below if you have any questions about our conversation today. Below this post in the Facebook group, I'll be sure to get back to you. So before we get started though, I just wanted to say welcome, Connie. Thank you so much for doing this with us today. I know we were chatting beforehand and I was saying how I think it's so important that people hear from other real people who have been through this experience in the program so that they kind of know what to expect. What is a kind of a real authentic experience in the program. And, we are even going to talk about maybe some of the apprehensiveness that you may have felt or some of the struggles that you had along the way and how you overcame those. And we're going to talk about, where you were before and where you are now. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. So thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to do it.
Amazing. So the way I like to start off is I always like to first ask, where were you with your arthritis before joining the anti-arthritis method? So, if you can talk a little bit about what type of arthritis you're dealing with and what kind of symptoms you were experiencing. So how is that affecting you?
Okay. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis 3 years ago in March of 2021. So we were like a year into COVID. Um, and I had been suspecting that I had rheumatoid arthritis. I didn't really want to face having rheumatoid arthritis.
Mhm.
My brother was diagnosed with it, and I thought, oh, now I'm pretty sure I have it. But I ran into a lot of pain. Um, I had been having problems with like my hands and my wrists to the point where there would be nights I couldn't sleep all night. I'd be up in a chair just because my hands kept falling asleep. It was like carpal tunnel, but it wasn't. Um, and then I started having pain in my shoulders and it got severe. It started in one shoulder, then it moved to the other. So I had it in both shoulders. And I was in a lot of pain 24/7. Um, wasn't able to sleep at night until I just fell asleep from total exhaustion and then would be awake an hour later from the pain. And so, of course, I had to go to the doctor. And I thought I had psoriatic arthritis. He changed that to rheumatoid arthritis and put me on a steroid and put me on methotrexate. Um, and gave me the steroid because methotrexate can take, months to work
Mhm.
if it ever does for the pain. I never really felt any benefit for the pain. But methotrexate it's strong. I think it's a chemotherapy. There's a lot of potential side effects. Can affect your organs, as can rheumatoid arthritis. So, you're kind of having to weigh. And honestly, I was in so much pain when I went into his office. If he told me I needed to cut both my ears off, I would have done it. I just needed some relief. And that's where it started. And then I knew I saw your I saw something of yours on Facebook, a post on Facebook, and I thought, I need to look into supplementing what I'm doing, medically. So if anything, I can minimize where possible, um, and that's why I joined.
Yeah. And so I'm curious to know too, Connie, you had said that your symptoms were really interfering with your ability to sleep properly because there was so much pain.
Yeah.
How else were your symptoms like interfering in your life, like day to day, in terms of like what you could or couldn't do?
Yeah, when it was that bad, my shoulders, I couldn't even cook. I couldn't cut,
Mhm.
literally at all.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make my bed. So I ended up sleeping. I would just put a blanket on the bed and then another blanket on top of me on the bed because I couldn't tuck it in.
Mm.
My shoulders, I guess I think he said it was tendonitis that flared up. It was because of the RA, and it was intense. And um, I was really in so much pain.
Mhm.
I couldn't, to drink a cup of coffee, I had to pick it up with both hands like a it's like I need a
Yeah.
sippy cup or something. You
Yeah.
know, it was, it changed my life in every way. I mean, fortunately, I work from home, so I was able to work, around the pain and I could hide it.
Mhm.
Um, if I worked away from home, there's no way. But my job typically would called for some traveling. Well, I had to pull out of that. There's no way because
Yeah.
I never knew when I'd have a flare.
Mhm.
Um, I wouldn't have been able to put my suitcase in the overhead bin,
Yeah.
so it really affected my life just about in every sense.
Yeah. And you had said that, once you had kind of seen my posts and things on Facebook, you were thinking, okay, I want to supplement what I'm doing medically with the medication, to manage this. So after you'd been taking the medication for a while, did you notice improvements? And if so, what were they? And, I know that sometimes they only get us so far. So I'm
Right.
curious to know, what kind of a little bit more about what made you decide that you needed something else to supplement what you were doing, with the medication as well.
Yeah. So he put me on methotrexate first, and I didn't get any pain relief from methotrexate. My brother didn't either, which surprised my doctor. But I mean, it may have been protecting my joints on the back end, which is good, but it wasn't doing anything on the front end. And so he added Humira. And Humira did help the pain, significantly, which is another very, very strong drug
Mhm.
with side effects. Um, so I was on both of those and then, moving along pretty well, but I still was having breakthrough. And when I started the AIP program, I knew that it would help because I had done an anti-inflammatory diet years before that was a month of, getting rid of a whole lot of things and that helped. But this is before I was ever diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. But I know that I have a tendency to become inflamed by certain foods.
Mhm.
So I was really interested in determining exactly which foods.
Yeah.
Um, because I had worked with an osteopath before and she had done a lot of testing on food sensitivities, but they move around. I
Mhm.
was constantly being tested and constantly having to give up foods that I had been eating. And, I just found it very frustrating.
Yes.
So I wanted to take a more practical approach and just, what bothers me, what doesn't, and to be able to kind of use AIP as a crutch. I mean, once you go beyond and you've added a lot of food back and you find that you're reacting to something, you could pull back
Mhm.
to straight, the 30-day AIP and get things cooled down
Yeah.
and move forward again.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that so many people run into that. They think, okay, well, I've had food sensitivity tests and it said that I can eat this and I can't eat this. But like you said, it changes all the time. And
Yeah.
the accuracy of those tests varies so much. There's so many different types of those tests. And
Mhm.
the only real way to figure out, what's triggering and aggravating pain and exacerbating the symptoms is to do the full on, elimination phase that
Yeah.
we do in the program where you're taking out any and all potential triggers and aggravators for a minimum of the 30 days. or until you're feeling better, so that when you do start reintroducing foods, you're able to tell by the way your body responds to those foods that you're reintroducing, whether or not it works for you or it doesn't. So
Mhm.
that is the kind of the gold standard of being able to know for sure what is really bothering us, because it's really hard too. I think a lot of times we kind of flounder around because we're like, well, I've heard I shouldn't eat this, so I'm going to try taking that out. But then most of the time we don't do it properly. We don't take it out for long enough,
Yep.
or, maybe we are still being aggravated by another food. So we kind of don't know if we're being aggravated by the food that we, took out, or we're not feeling any better. It's like, well, I took out gluten, but I still feel like crap. And it's been, 3 weeks or a month. And then we think, well, it must not be gluten because I still feel terrible. But it's like, well, am I still eating other foods that are causing problems? And we don't really know that until we go through that process of that elimination phase
Yeah.
and the reintroduction. And that can be challenging. It can be really
Yeah.
challenging to do that on our own, especially if we're not quite sure how to go about doing it. So I'm also curious, Connie. So in the course of doing the anti-arthritis method program with myself and the rest of the group, what kind of changes did you start seeing? Like, I know, because I was thinking back, I was like, we've worked together for a long time, because you were one of
Mhm.
my long-term alumni members as well, even after the 3-month program.
Yep.
So if you can just try to think back, what do you think you noticed were some of the first changes that you were experiencing in the course of the program?
Yeah. Well, I definitely think, especially in that first 30 days, even though I was on methotrexate and Humira, I could feel a calming down of just my whole symptom, because with RA, it isn't just pain, the fatigue can be intense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that can be a debilitating symptom in itself,
Absolutely.
and I found as I was working through that month, I could feel the fatigue lessening.
Mhm.
And which helps, because when you're trying to experiment with different foods and you're preparing foods, a little bit of energy goes a long way.
Mhm.
Um, and that's very helpful. Another thing that I found helpful with how your approach to the AIP program versus that anti-inflammatory diet I went on years ago, you can make it as simple or as complicated as you want to.
Mhm.
Whereas the anti-inflammatory diet I went on, you were like cooking 3 meals a day. So if you didn't work from home, there's no way you could do that.
Yeah.
And even working from home, I just was like, I just can't even prepare another meal.
Mhm.
Um, that was too much. They were good, but it was too much. So I did it for a month. I felt better. I couldn't keep going
Mhm.
for any length of time. But with yours, if you just want something simple, as long as it's within the foods on that first 30 days, um, you can throw a sweet potato in the oven and put spinach and, you can make it simple if you want to.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say too, like, you don't need to have any special chef skills. I myself, I'm not really a fan of cooking. I do it out of necessity. So
Right.
I do it, I'm kind of like two different types of proteins I make, and then I'm, have a kind of a rolling veggie cooking throughout the week that's really simplified, because I like to keep things really simple and not spend a ton of time. Whereas I do have some of my group members love cooking, and
Yep.
they'll be more than happy to try new things and then share it in the group. And then it's
Yes.
okay. So it just depends on who you are and like what you like, and we can accommodate whatever fits your personality. Like you said, you can keep it as simple or as complicated as you like. It's totally up to you, and what works for you, which is really important, because you need to incorporate this process into your life. It's not something that you just do for the 3 months and then,
Yep.
just go back to everything that you did before that was irritating your joints and aggravating your symptoms. So I'm also curious, Connie, what kind of any apprehensions or hesitations that you had about joining the anti-arthritis method program? Because I know for some people it's a big decision.
Yeah. I don't think I was really apprehensive about joining because I had tried some things before. You'll remember I was apprehensive about giving up coffee.
Yeah.
I was, like, I'm not giving up coffee. I've done it before several times, and I swore I was never going to give up coffee again.
Mhm.
But then the more I read of the materials for the first 30 days of AIP, I realized if I'm going to do this, I have to do it perfectly for 30 days, because I want to know
Mhm.
what I'm having trouble with and what I'm not having trouble with. And the only way I'm going to know that, I know I have food sensitivities. I have for years. And the only way I'm going to get a handle on it is if I really am diligent that first 30 days, which means coffee had to
Yeah.
go. And even though I knew in my heart that coffee wasn't causing problems for me, I gave it up for the 30 days. It was the first thing I added back. And fortunately, I don't have trouble with coffee.
Mhm.
And the only thing I put in coffee is like a half a teaspoon of honey. So, um, I don't add a lot of things to coffee. Didn't before, so I didn't have trouble with that. Um, I think if there's any apprehension is, you know, will I be able to stick to this for 30 days? Will I be able to, do what I need to do beyond the 30 days? Because life can get in the way and be challenging. And one thing you have said, and I think it's really important for people to realize, you've been doing this for 10 plus years,
Mhm.
and you've had your stumbles along the way. And even, now, when the holidays come, or, you're around friends, you can stumble a little. I don't mean but one can stumble a little, and the world doesn't end. You might wake up not feeling well the next day, and then you have to pull back. Um, but I think you can make yourself less, because I can be an all or nothing person. That is one of the worst traits anyone can have in any regard.
Mhm.
Um, and therapists talk about it now. Get rid of the all or nothing mentality, because, if you trip up, just step back.
Mhm.
It's not an opioid addiction. So one trip up isn't going to ruin a lot of, it'll ruin a little bit of work, but it's only going to ruin a teeny tiny bit of work that you can probably turn around within a matter of days.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, that's, I think trying to keep an open mind and realizing this is a lifelong thing. And I think for anyone who's been diagnosed with RA, first you have to get through the fact that you've been diagnosed with RA.
Mhm.
Because, sometimes I can be a little annoyed by that.
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, I think it's accepting, and there's a grieving process, I think, as well,
Yeah.
because it means that, life isn't necessarily going to go exactly as we had planned,
Yep.
and that we have to make adjustments for our quality of life along the way that maybe at first we don't want to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's totally normal. I think we're all resistant to change, especially if it means maybe cutting out some of the foods that we really like, or coffee,
Yes.
temporarily, to see if it's something that works for us or not. But the thing is too, is the more you go on with the program and the healthier you get, like from the inside out, because that's what we're really working on. We're really working on, addressing the symptoms where they begin, so
Hmm.
that we're not just putting a Band-Aid on top and trying to, well, the symptoms. We're trying to actually prevent them, and also heal some of those reasons that we're having those symptoms in the first place. So, getting our gut healthy, getting our immune system back in balance. And that takes time. But the beauty of it is that, yeah, okay, if you go off plan and you have foods or something that you know doesn't agree with you, your body is always going to get stronger. And so it can bounce back a lot quicker than
Right.
if you hadn't done any of that work. And so that's one of the main improvements that I see people making, is that you're becoming stronger from the inside out. And so that you're not going to have as many symptoms all the time. And I'm also really curious, I'm sure everyone else is, Connie. Can you tell us, like, what has changed for you in terms of how your body feels and in terms of your symptoms from, pre-programmed to now? Like, what's different for you?
Yeah, I think, well, there's actually several things. One, is generally my energy is better than it was before. Um, the fatigue when you're in the thick of it can be really, I found that to be really difficult to deal with.
Mhm.
Um, but also, the worst day pain wise now is better than the best day pain wise around the time I was diagnosed. There are some days where I'll feel some breakthrough pain and I know I've brought it on. Um, but I can quickly turn it around,
Mhm.
you know. I know what caused it and I can turn it around quickly.
Yeah, I love that.
Now, what that doesn't do, and I'm still working on this because it's that whole long-term thing, you know, the tripping up and turning around, tripping up, turning around, is the underlying issues aren't going to really heal very quickly the more you do that.
Mhm.
You got to kind of do a little bit of a steady state, I think, to get some real healing going on under the surface. And that's what I'm trying to work towards now.
Mhm.
I have trouble with sugar, but sugar also is like one of the absolute worst things for RA.
Yeah.
Um, and when I stumble, it's usually with sugar.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think so many people can relate to that, right? Like, so many people struggle with sugar. It is a really addictive type food, right? When
Yeah,
we
it
have it,
is.
our brain is like, I like this. I want more.
Yeah,
And we talk about that a lot in group about, the motivational triad. Our brain naturally is always going to want us to seek pleasure, avoid pain, and save energy. So
yeah,
that just means it's always going to drive us towards the, pleasurable foods, experiences, and to do things the easiest way. So it's going to tell us that when we're doing something new, when the challenges arise, it's going to be like, you don't need to do that. You're fine. Just go back to what you
yeah,
did before, because that's what's comfortable and that's what's easy and that saves energy. So when we're doing something that's a new change at the beginning, that does take energy because we're working on, new habits. We're rewiring our brain essentially. And that's a
hmm,
process that I think a lot of us look, it's a lifelong process. So, even if you are, trip up and then you start again, you're still better off than you were if you had done nothing along the way, because you've
right.
learned so much along the way. And Connie, what do you think, like in terms of this process and the program, what do you think are some of the tools that you have incorporated or some of the changes that you've made on a regular basis in your life, over the last, let's say, year?
Yeah. And one thing as far as sugar goes, there are desserts and sweet things you can eat on the AIP program.
Oh yeah.
They're more, they involve, things like dates and, fruits and things like that. And they're very good. There's some really, really good recipes. You have to make them or do something, to get them edible. I also find I don't, I don't sit down and eat a ton of the AIP desserts because they're rich and they're filling.
Mhm.
Um, Whereas if you sat down with a bag of M&Ms, you could really do some damage. A lot of damage with M&Ms because they're so little. Um, so I think it's, trying to focus on things like that. I just got over bronchitis. And so there wasn't a lot of cooking going on, and there was ice cream eating happening
Mhm.
in this house. So I had to get past that because I was starting to really feel it in
Mhm.
my joints. And it's like on top of everything else, my wrist hurts. So I had to pull away from the ice cream and get back on track.
Yeah, but now you have that set of tools that you know works for you and
Yeah.
that brings you back into that place of, like you said, having, your worst day now is better than your best day used to be. And so
Yes.
that's a huge, huge improvement.
Yes.
And what do you think, Connie, is the result that you've achieved since doing this program with me that you're most proud of?
I mean,
What
I
change
think, yeah, I mean, I think really is taking control. There's so many things if you've got a health issue that you don't have control over. And I think this lets you take some control.
Yeah.
That some things are in your hands.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that is what I'm the most proud of. It's just taking control of what I can take control of.
Mhm. I love that so much. Um, yeah, I'm not going to say too much more of that, but just reiterating that, I tell people this all the time. It is, so often with this illness, and the various types of arthritis, we feel like our bodies kind of betrayed us and that it's out of our control and that we're just kind of keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that the medication we're given or the different things we're trying so desperately with are going to minimize the pain and gain some control over our symptoms because it's really scary and it can be so debilitating and can really wreak havoc on our life and what we are able to do and not do, whether it's like work or fun or mood or relationships. It affects everything. So I always say, like, this is something that gives you the tools to gain control over your symptoms.
Right.
So you're not just always wondering, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to feel when I wake up tomorrow? What's going to happen today? You don't have to
Yes.
worry about that anymore. So thank you for sharing that because having that control, I think is such a relief for so many
Yes.
of us, knowing that there is something that we can do to have more control over how we feel and our illness. And we don't have to live in pain and the unpredictability of flare ups whenever they may occur. So, yeah, I'm really glad that you said that.
Yeah. I remember a girl in one of our group calls. She was on for a while. She was a nurse and was really I think she had to take leave because she was in so, can you imagine being a nurse um in that kind of pain? And she responded really quickly to the AIP program. I mean, really quickly,
Mhm.
and was able to go back to work. And things like that are, of course, she is about 20 years younger than I am, but um things like that are really inspiring, you
Mhm.
know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I could talk about this forever. Like I said, I was telling you before, I'm like, I could go on tangents and just talk about all the different aspects of this forever because I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah.
And it's so exciting for me to be able to do this work. But I'm going to leave it there.
Okay.
Because like I said, this could go on forever. But is there anything else, Connie, that we haven't talked about today that you wanted to share or anything else that you wanted to mention about the anti-arthritis method program or your experience before we close out today?
I think the only thing I would say is just try it and commit to the 30 days. I know that there are some people who needed more than 30 days to really get measurable benefit, but I think most people really saw the benefit in 30 days. Um, you're certainly not going to lose anything,
Yeah.
and there's so much that you can gain. And just to take those tools and to be able to feel better, whether you're on RA medications or whether you're able to use the program to push them off,
Mhm.
and be able to go without them. Either way, you're not gonna lose anything. You'll only gain.
Well, thank you for that. I couldn't agree more. Well, thanks again, Connie, for helping us out today and sharing your story. I really, really appreciate it. I think that it's really going to resonate with a lot of people and really
Yeah.
be encouraging to a lot of people in our group.
I hope
So,
it is.
absolutely, absolutely. So I'm going to leave it there and yeah, have a wonderful night, everybody. And let me know if you have any questions, just post them in the group below. And yeah, it's been great working with you, Connie. I hope you stay in
Well,
touch.
I really appreciate everything you've done.
Aw,
And I know people will benefit from the work that you're doing.
well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I hope you stay in touch.
Thank you. I will. You too.
Thank you. All right. Take care, Connie. Bye,
You
everybody.
too. Bye-bye.